Hey, what is going on, guys? What is happening? You guys have tuned into Rules for Rebels. In today's video, we're going to be talking about an article from metro.co.uk, and the article is titled, 1 in 10 Young People Say They're Never Planning on Getting a Job. Think about that. 10% of young people say that they're never going to get a job in their entire lives, and it kind of makes you wonder and kind of begs the question, how do you plan on supporting yourself? Are you going to live with your mom and dad forever? Are you going to set up an OnlyFans account and sell OnlyFans content and show your butthole all day long? Are you going to set up an OnlyFeet account and sell pictures of your feet? Do you plan on being a YouTuber? Like, what exactly are you planning on doing? Are you going to be on welfare? What are you going to do? What do 10% of young people think they're going to do if they're not going to work and not going to get jobs? There's actually a number of startling statistics in here in terms of the percentages of young people who are not only out of the workforce, but not pursuing training, not pursuing education. And also the number of people who just feel hopeless, right? They feel they can't get interviews. They feel like they'll never get a job that will allow them to support themselves. They feel like they'll never be able to get a job that will allow them to buy a home, find a wife or a husband, start a family. And I think that's when you look at things like the Great Resignation and quiet quitting and a lot of these things, I think a lot of this kind of comes down to a feeling of hopelessness, particularly among young people, but really kind of among everybody. I know a lot of millennials feel as if they're forever priced out of the housing market. There's plenty of societal problems as it is. There's a huge divide in wealth between the 1% and everybody else. There's a huge wage gap between CEOs and normal everyday workers. And while inflation has been out of control for decades, and while we've been spending money like crazy for decades, it's really sped up in the past 2 years since the Mexican beer cough. We know that what is it, like 40% or 60% of all the money printed in all of history was printed in the last 2 years. We see things like the price of vegetables up 40%, used cars up over 40% in 2 years. The government and the Fed has destroyed the purchasing power of our dollars, which has only further exacerbated the feeling of hopelessness among a lot of people. Now, I don't know if any of you guys spend any time on Reddit or 4chan, but there's kind of an example of this from each one of those platforms or each one of those sites. On Reddit, you'll find subreddits like r/anti-work or r/lost generation, where basically you just have a bunch of young people who feel like hopeless and there's no point to life and they're failures and they've completely given up. Over on 4chan, you'll find a different group of people. These people refer to themselves as NEETs, N-E-E-T. A lot of times, like when you see a bad piece of news in the media, like, everything's costing 40% more, jobs are only paying this, people will be like, I'm so glad I'm a NEET. And being a NEET, essentially means, and this is actually an acronym, like a real acronym. It stands for Not in Education or Training. So this is basically young people who, they don't have a job, they're not doing an apprenticeship, they're not trying to learn a trade, they're not going to college, they're just hanging out, they're living with their parents, couch surfing, I guess there's kind of another class of NEET, which is people who maybe made some money off of crypto and moved to a rural area, moved to an area with a cheaper cost of living, and are like, I'm not really concerned about material things or making money. I got myself a trailer out here on 40 acres in, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan or Mississippi or wherever else, and I'm cool just kind of dropping out of the rat race and kind of doing my thing. And I think that's actually a pretty cool idea. That's kind of my ultimate goal. But you also have a lot of people who are like, I guess I'm just going to live with my parents for forever. And I think this is also why we hear nobody wants to work. There was a time when, a man could graduate high school, and with not much more than a high school degree, either go get a job in the trades, get a job in a factory, get some type of job that would allow him to get married, support a family, have a house and a car, right? Like you could have a decent life. May not be luxurious, but you could kind of have all those things so you could have a decent life. The reality today for a lot of people, even a lot of college graduates, they can do everything right. They can go through college, but the combination of student loans and just how expensive it is to live, and how wages aren't really keeping up with the cost of inflation and the cost of living, people feel like even if I do everything right and even if I bust my butt, I'll basically continue to just barely be able to scrape by. And what's the point of any of this, right? Like, if I'm going to work 60 hours a week and barely get by, I might as well just kind of drop out of the system, get a link card, go on welfare, get some subsidized housing, and be a NEET. And at least I can stay home and play video games. It won't be a great life, but at least I'm not wasting 60 hours a week slaving away for no benefit. So with all that said, let's hop on into this article. This article, again, comes from Metro, metro.co.uk, and I'll link to this article in the description box below. 1 in 10 young people say they're never planning on getting a job. Many young people feel totally excluded from the job markets and are rapidly losing hope, according to a new report. Youth unemployment is chronically high, with 16% of all 18 to 24-year-olds, which is 859,000 people, not in work. This is the craziest stat. Nearly 1 in 10 young people, 227,000, not currently in employment or studying, say they never intend to work a day in their life. And I would love to ask some of these people, like, what do you plan on doing with your time? How do you plan on getting food? How do you plan on getting housing? I know over in Europe and the UK, I think they're a little bit more generous with, some of the public safety nets or aid programs. But nonetheless, it's still pretty crazy. The findings are based on a survey of 5,000 people commissioned by City and Guilds, a skilled training organization. It paints a bleak picture in which many people feel excluded in jobs markets, which can seem hostile or geared against those looking to get a foot on the ladder. Almost a third, 30% of young people stated they don't think they will ever be able to achieve their career ambition. So it's crazy enough that 10% of people just plan on never getting a job. But you have 30% of people who would like to start a career, would like to get a job, but they feel like they'll never be able to have a good job or live up to their career ambitions. The figures are even more stark for society's most vulnerable, particularly those who have been in the prison system, 59%, those who have been a refugee, 54%, or those who have been through the care system, 44%. Christy Donnelly, CEO of City and Guild, said, "We can keep blaming the pandemic for the issues facing today's youth. High unemployment has been an issue for more than a decade, and the pandemic was just another challenge heaped onto an already creaking system that makes it incredibly difficult for young people to convert their aspirations into good jobs." Now, here's something that's interesting, right? So according to the Fed data, and when we're looking at inflation and whether the Fed is going to continue hiking rates, one thing that we're seeing is wages continue to go up. But it's kind of weird how wages have gone up. We had the Great Resignation. We know that hospitality, fast food, restaurant industry, all these types of jobs, nobody wants to work in them. Even people who previously worked in those industries prior to and during the Mexican beer cough period, something like 74 or 80% of them said they did not want to go back to that industry. So nobody wants to work in those industries. They don't pay well. They don't lend to a good work-life balance. It tends to be nights and weekends. You're dealing with irate customers. Just nobody wants to do those jobs. So what we wound up seeing is a lot of these fast food jobs, hospitality jobs that in the past might have paid $7, $9, $10, $11, $12 an hour. A lot of these jobs started paying $20 an hour, $25 an hour, $300 signing bonus, $500 signing bonus, $1,000 signing bonus. We've seen wages go up, but the wages have gone up for the people at the bottom rung of the ladder, right? The jobs and the people who would have made the lowest income out of anybody, the people who would have been making minimum wage or close to it, they've seen their salaries like double or triple because you have to pay that much to attract people to do those jobs. But the guy making 35 grand, 40 grand, managing a retail store, managing a restaurant, the guy making 40 grand a year as a marketing analyst, right? Like the kind of lower level office jobs or white collar jobs, they're not really seeing their wages rise, even though inflation's going higher. Like pretty much all of the rise in wages seem to be among kind of the most vulnerable in our society, which in some ways is kind of a good thing. But also those jobs probably should have been paid more from the very beginning. Getting back into the article, in addition to our research, we found that young people who have faced additional challenges, such as young careers, care, and prison leavers, and those who come from less affluent families are falling way behind their peers in the labor market at the ugliest stage of their careers. At the earliest stage of their careers. The current system is baking in inequality and preventing millions of young people from meeting their potential. More than 2 in 5, or 43%, do not believe their education has equipped them with the skills they need to get the job they want. So, not only is high school not preparing people for the real world, but I think college is kind of a joke, right? We've talked about this numerous times. When I was coming out of high school, the message that was kind of drilled into our heads by guidance counselors, teachers, and our parents was like, go to college, go to college, go to college. If you want to have a good life, you got to go to college. And if you said, oh, well, yeah, I'm kind of more interested in being a bricklayer or a fireman. Nope, you got to go to college. Well, but I don't know if I'm cut out for college. I don't really know what I want to do. Doesn't matter. Go get a degree in basket weaving. Go get a history degree if you like history. Just get a degree in anything. That piece of paper will open up doors for you. Well, do we really need another communications major? Do we really need another leisure studies major? No, but we've pushed everybody into college to basically get no skills, get a lot of debt, and waste 4 years of their life. And then they come out not prepared to do any job, as opposed to sending people to college to be mechanics, or not even college, sending people to training to be mechanics, to be some type of medical assistant, to get some type of certificate, some type of computer or networking certificate. To go into the trades, we need electricians, we need plumbers, we need truck drivers. But rather than kind of looking at young people's aptitudes and sending them down a route that they actually would be good at and do have the aptitude for, we're kind of just pushing everybody to college. When I was in high school, there was basically one college alternative. It was either you go to college, and this one was pretty much only for the girls. But if you were a girl and you were interested in cosmetology, the girls had a program where I think starting their junior year, they could leave school at, I don't know, maybe lunchtime, and they would go to cosmetology school for the rest of the day, and then they would get jobs and actually work, work at salons and work in the cosmetology field. That was really the only alternative or the only other path besides college. Let's see, back into the article. The current system, okay, so we talked about that. More than 2 in 5, or 43%, do not believe their education has equipped them with the skills they need to get a job. And 2/3, or 64%, of young people say it's not easy to get a good job these days. And nearly a third, 29%, said they have struggled to get interviews. 1 in 5, or 19%, say there simply aren't jobs available in their local area. So, I think there's a lot of truth to this. I've talked about a buddy of mine got a job at Amazon. He's making $25 an hour. There was no interview. It was basically, if you could pass a drug test, you were guaranteed to be hired. And they don't even do a urine or a hair follicle test. They actually do a mouth swab. So, you could smoke 3 blunts a day. And if you brush your teeth real good and use some mouthwash prior to going in and getting that mouth swab, you will pass the test. So anybody who says, oh, well, there's no jobs out there. I mean, there are jobs out there. You just may not want to do those jobs. And we actually talked about another article in the video we made earlier today about how a lot of young people would rather have no job at all than take a job that, society doesn't look upon as a successful job. You guys know I always like reading comments to articles, so there's a number of comments here. So let's give a read to a few of these. Bars and restaurants around my way are often desperate for staff. Admittedly, usually minimum wage, but at least it's a job. It is much easier to pick up a better job if you can show you have an attitude of wanting to work, rather than sitting back and saying it doesn't pay enough, as many of these kids do. The number of times I've seen them not want to bother to show up for an interview or come along like they've just crawled out of bed in their clothes is unbelievable. Perhaps they already see that you can't support yourself on minimum wage. Not sure what they think the realistic alternative is to getting started on a career ladder, though. Headline. 1 in 10 young people say they're never planning on getting a job. Actual information in the article. Nearly 1 in 10 people, 227,000, not currently in employment or studying, so they never, okay. There's a massive difference. Okay, nearly 1 in 10, not currently in work a day in their life. I'm not really sure what that guy's trying to say. Let's see here. What happens when role models happen to be some dubious internet drama divas and attention seekers, and critical thought isn't taught in schools? Not that a lot of them would listen, though, because they think they know better, or that their mates' approval is more important than their own education. So if they are never going to get a job or go to work, do they think they will live on fresh air or benefits? Let's see. Someone else says, clearly following the example set by their doe-like parents. So, like I said, the UK and Europe are more generous with giving out, welfare and housing and food and free medical care. So, I think you'd probably get by a little bit easier in Europe, or the UK being a NEET. Let's see. I can't read this BS newspaper anymore. One of the most misleading statistical BS headlines I've seen in a good while. You got my click, but you've lost a reader. Benefits are too attractive. I started work at 16. I didn't like the job, paid little money, but I did it. These layabouts need to be forced to work, regardless of whether or not they like it, or conscript them into the military. The rejects that are no good can be deported to Rwanda. Sorted. So it looks like that's the end of the comments, but I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts, opinions, and comments on this story. So go ahead and drop a comment down below. If you guys enjoyed today's video, give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed to the channel, click that subscribe button down below and ring the bell, and I will catch you guys on the next video.